Hello, everyone. I have the great pleasure of welcoming today Cristel Guillain, Stanislas Guerini, Charles Gorintin, and Bruno Mettling, whom I will let introduce themselves briefly and tell us, in their opinion, what is the best reason to embrace AI at work today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cristel Guillain. I am a director, transformation and talent at the ADH of Natixis, an investment bank that is part of the EPSI group. And previously, I was a banker and financed infrastructure and decarbonization projects. Why embrace AI at work today? I would like to say that it's what the minister said. AI is already here. So we are already embracing it. In my daily life, it's in my phone, it's in my car, it's even in my fridge recently. And so, as an employee, when I arrive at work, I want to be able to benefit from the same time savings, the same tools that save me time in my private life. That's what we observe at our place. At Natixis, we deployed a chatbot, a conversational agent, less than a year ago throughout the APC group as well, by the way. And we are witnessing a fantastic enthusiasm. We have trained, we were talking about training earlier, we have trained 100% of the employees who use this tool, the art of the prompt, as we say. And then we deployed this tool, and today we observe that more than 30%, less than a year after deployment, of employees use it daily. So we see why it's important to seize it.
Thank you, Cristel.
Stanislas. Hello, everyone. I would like to make a preliminary remark that it is very difficult to talk about generative AI after Vincent Luciani and before Charles Gorintin. So I will do what any sensible person would do in my place, which is to talk less about AI and more about what I know, a little more, that is, about work. And what has engaged me for 2 years, namely public services and the civil service. And I say this because I think that for us, decision makers, HR directors, CEOs, employers, fundamentally in the room, what should concern us the most is what is most human in each of us individually, and what is most human in our organizations, which is to do what AI will not be able to do. That is to envision a world as it is not today and as it does not exist today. And I believe that this is where we should focus, put our attention. And fundamentally, AI raises questions that are profoundly human. So I find it difficult to choose among all the good reasons. And I readily agree with what Astrid Panosian said, that the biggest risk is not to act. I believe there is one thing we are not allowed to do, and that is to endure passively. AI is here, that's obvious. I received my first briefing notes for meeting preparation produced by AI. Nothing personal against all those who worked in the office, but they were of very, very high quality. And I was struck by an anecdote. You may have seen some initial articles about a town hall. I won't name it to avoid ostracizing it, especially since it has made progress since then, which saw its first public officials using AI and whose first instinct was to ban it. And so I find it very interesting to imagine that AI has arrived in the pockets of public officials and that the solution of banning it might not have been the best, considering that, in the end, public data would continue to be released, and I prefer that they be controlled rather than end up on chat. So that's at least one good reason. The second, I'll say briefly and perhaps offensive, but I believe it would be madness to imagine that we will transform our public services by turning our backs on generative AI and digitization. And I think we need to move beyond this absurd debate that opposes the humanization of our public services, which is necessary. The French want more voices and faces behind counters alongside digitization. And I believe we need to start by asking the right questions about how we make digital technology accessible. I don't want to be too long-winded. I was very committed to the issue of accessibility, especially for people with disabilities. And in a way, I am making a collective call to us. AI, in my opinion, should allow us to save time on this issue. And then the third reason, and I'll stop there, is that we must not endure everything else. The issue, and particularly one we never talk about, is the topics of attractiveness and demographics. I remind you that we have a wave of retirements in the public sector, like we've perhaps never had before. The civil servants who were recruited at the beginning from the first 7-year term of François Mitterrand are now retiring. Currently, there are 70,000 jobs that are unfilled. And I believe we have an opportunity to both improve the quality of work, and because we know what to do, civil servants whose work will change if we want more people in our hospitals, more people behind counters, more police officers in our streets.
Thank you very much. Charles, it's your turn.
Hello, I am Charles Gorintin. I am the co-founder and technical director of Alan, which is a health partner, particularly involved in health insurance. And I am also a non-operational co-founder of Mistral AI, which you probably know, which develops foundational AI models. Why invest in AI? First of all, I completely agree with what was said before. Investing, particularly in disability, is something that is quite exceptional. I had the opportunity to work a little with Olivier Gorintin, who is an entrepreneur affected by Charcot's disease. We were able to develop, thanks to AI tools, to help him speak again after he had lost his voice, to really be able to speak with his former voice. And these are quite exceptional tools. So I will digress a bit. But the reason why, in my opinion, companies should embrace AI is for three major reasons. Firstly, because it greatly increases team productivity if applied correctly. So, for example, at Alan, 100% of employees use AI every week. 100%. And so we gain a lot, as noted. A bit in the report, we estimated a productivity gain of about 20%. Secondly, it allows us to reduce costs and increase quality of the work we are able to accomplish. There is an example in the report about the fact that we process 1 million invoices per year at Alan, and it used to cost us 2 to 3 euros each time for a human to extract the doctor's name, the date, the reimbursed amount. With AI, we are able to reduce this cost to just a few cents. And at the same time, it allows us to reimburse almost in less than a minute, whereas it used to take several hours or even days when a human was involved. And finally, it allows the people who were doing this work, which, let's be honest, wasn't very exciting or fulfilling, to extract data from documents to be placed on topics that are a bit more interesting for them. So that's the second point. And the third point is that it allows us to build new services that were absolutely not possible before the advent of generative AI. So an example is at Alan, we just launched our AI medical assistant that we named Mo, where you can talk directly with this medical assistant who will answer all our health questions. And after 15 minutes, a doctor will review the conversation and validate it to maintain the human connection while benefiting from the immediacy, ubiquity, and low cost of AI, which is extremely important today in France, where we have medical deserts and long waiting times before being able to speak to medical personnel.
Thank you very much indeed, Charles.
Bruno, yes. So in a word, I have had a career both around social issues in particular. I had the honor of being a social advisor to a minister of economy at a time when digital transformation issues were beginning to emerge. And then, to return to the most recent period, I created 6 years topics from a journey of 4 business leaders, notably HR directors, around an obsession: successfully managing the human aspect of transformations, and obviously particularly the challenges of digital transformation, which are accelerating with AI. So that's to summarize a little bit my career and my convictions. Why put AI at the heart of business reflections? Today, I see 3 reasons. First, our companies are not a model of living together, perfectly coherent, without tension. The matrix organizations, as they have developed, create incredible tension in daily operations. And I find that AI, by the way, we don't say it, is a reparative function in the daily operations of our companies, obviously by lightening the most repetitive, least efficient tasks, but also by the ability to restore communication challenges in organizations that are, once again, increasingly fragmented across the world. The second issue is productivity. I observe the way in which research and innovation centers, etc., which were massively positioned in our country, are increasingly tending to disperse I observe how the productivity of European companies has deteriorated in recent years, and I clearly see the response of the traditional economic world to these shocks, and I'm particularly thinking of small and medium-sized enterprises behind the major players who are repositioning themselves in a global economy. I can see what the positive shock could be. The competitiveness of AI is, for me, one of the capabilities for our country to respond to this economic shock. A third response, it is not longer. In the long term, the third issue is demographic evolution. I am driving the point home, as Stanislas mentioned, when we project the changes in workforce numbers in our companies and the competitiveness challenges, it is clear that our country's ability to provide the skills we need tomorrow, especially in skilled employment, is far from guaranteed, accelerating the cycle, obviously, and the risk for our country. And AI can indeed be part of the solution. That's why there can't be much hesitation about the why, which doesn't solve the difficulty of the how.
Well, then let's move on to the what and the how. So the what is the following question: what will work look like tomorrow with AI? So what the report shows is that the shaping of tomorrow's work is closely linked to the level of automation we will be able to achieve with this AI. And so the question I would like to ask you is, how far will this automation go? What will its limits be? Will they be primarily technological or social, for example? Will we accept machine error as well as human error? Are there other limits? And depending on this limit of automation, if it doesn't go all the way and humans remain in the loop, what will their new role be?
We can add planetary limits, as we discussed earlier. It's a question that absolutely needs to be asked. But on the ground, what I observe today, because indeed it's a matter of competitiveness to get these tools adopted, perhaps the first limit I've noticed, the most obvious one, is fear. The fear of being replaced. I want to be replaced by the machine. So I have within our teams, in HR, at Natixis, I launched a project in 2022 to provide employees with an AI-powered tool that allows them to explore career possibilities, change jobs, find training, etc. And it's true that the initial reaction from the HR teams was, is this tool going to replace me in the end? But what we observe today, 2.5 years after deployment, is quite the opposite. We have more interactions between employees and HR, and then the HR themselves, well, the HR function itself, the HR realize that they have saved a lot of time. When an employee comes to my office for a meeting to talk about their career, they no longer come with a blank page. They come already with proposals, so to speak, for jobs, for training. I no longer have to, as HR, search among the 500 open jobs today in the company or the 800 training courses in my catalog. I don't waste that time and instead invest it in support, in advice, etc. So what I see more today in the field is rather HR, not enhanced. I don't feel enhanced. I feel rather relieved because I can focus on my core business. I chose HR for this profession. The first observation is rather more interaction, but Vincent also mentioned it earlier. And then beyond that, perhaps what I also noticed while doing this project is that initially, how to get people to talk, so HR managers, because the idea was to bring HR managers together with IT specialists, data scientists, to create this product together. Of course, how to get them to talk together. These are people who were in silos, who didn't talk to each other, at least not for any project. So there's this cultural managerial challenge of getting these people who didn't talk to each other to communicate. And we also see interactions that didn't exist before happening now. And it's wonderful for me to see this because today we have trained HR in AI. Thanks to this project, I participated. I see that I am the one deciding what this algorithm will do. I see that I will test it with real test cases. I will check if there are no biases. I will be able to change it eventually if it doesn't suit me. And then when a colleague comes with what the AI has suggested to them, I will know how to respond to them. But why? I will be able to say there might be an error, but I can explain it, correct it. So there you go. These two existing limits are real, but what I noticed today in any case is that it actually creates more human interaction than I do.
Thank you so much, Cristel, for your help.
First, thank you for steering the debate, and I want to pay tribute to what Artifacts has done, and for steering the debate towards the question of how rather than why. I find that we are really quite strong in France at spending a lot of time on the big debates about why. When the Americans announce that they are investing 500 billion euros and the Chinese come out of IPSI, I say this in a necessarily oversimplified way, but I'm quite happy that among practitioners in a certain way, these are the questions that bring us together today. I don't have all the answers to the questions you have asked. I say this through what we have tried to do in public services since we launched Albert. Albert is the generative AI of public services, which is an open AI, which is a sovereign AI. I am not starting the big debates on how far the level of sovereignty goes. And so what we have tried to do is first to try to combine a top-down and bottom-up approach, if I may say so, without any pejorative connotation, by doing it from the bottom up. But I was quite struck by the fact that AI was already there. There was first-generation AI, as Vincent mentioned, etc. There were quite a few use cases, but they were use cases with very, very high heterogeneity. It was sometimes anecdotal in a certain way. And the question I would ask when I regularly gathered the data administrators in the ministries was, is your minister aware of this thing? And often the answer was, not really. Does it fit into the strategic roadmap and the government's priority policies that we want to implement? And the reality was that we were leaving it, and that's a good thing. It was certainly a first generation of projects, use cases, etc. That needed to be allowed to emerge. I think we needed to try to adopt an approach both through digital commons. There are great advocates for digital commons where we create this framework of trust that Vincent mentioned. I think it's extremely important regarding data, its interoperability, ethics, security, and sovereignty to then allow us to advance strategically and elevate to a strategic level. In a way, that's what we try to do. That's what we tried to do by pooling Albert for different administrations, then connecting research labs, startups, etc. Then quickly go to market. I think that's it. The second characteristic is to test, experiment, and in a way rehabilitate a form of right to make mistakes within organizations. I believe that is very important. We saw it during COVID. We worked a bit differently and rehabilitated risk-taking. I think that's something that's missing in our organizations, and even more so in our administrations. So we did it on a voluntary basis at first. We tested it on relational intelligence on a project where there were 3,000 agents involved, 2,000 of whom said, I'm interested in testing it. It was interesting to see it that way. We were completely transparent about the use of AI, and I think the right to information is an absolutely crucial element. So testing. Trained, of course. I'm being brief because it's something that has been developed. And then, if we want to go further, we now need to move towards a much more systemic approach to AI, from opportunistic use cases, not in the negative sense, but to a systemic approach, and with a question that involves social dialogue, and a second question concerning the adaptation of skills. And I believe that, one, I'm not starting the debate before the debate.
Thank you. But as a result, the agents have been automated.
To what extent on Albert at this stage, while keeping the final say? All right. That is to say, I don't want to be too long, but when faced with incoming emails from users, from citizens, they generate responses with quite impressive results. It was an average response time on Service Public Plus. Service Public Plus, it's the little buttons where I give my opinion on the administrative procedures, 13 days of average response time. It's frightening. We have reduced it to less than 3 days in all the services that used our Albert to respond, with a 10% increase in quality. And to this day, an agent who keeps the final say. But I wouldn't be shocked if for certain responses, the public agent, but the AI agent could respond. The key is to keep control over the rules of the game we set if we define the right criteria by saying this. It's a user question that has already been asked 1,000 times in an exactly similar form, and we know that the answer is quite certainly that one So honestly, I think that in a sovereign manner, we might decide, but it's a real topic for public debate, whether it should be a public agent who spends time validating a response they have already accepted. But the key is human in the loop, as the Americans say, to keep the human at the table and decide the rules of the game we set for ourselves, rather than being obsessed with having the last word systematically.
Thank you very much. Bruno.
First of all, I have a memory from 2015. I find that the way we are approaching the new phase of AI with AGI today is infinitely more controlled, including creating a climate of trust than in 2015. I remember in 2015, a Minister of Labour entrusted me with a report where I had people working together from the MEDEF to the CGT, in France for the first time at the national level, confronted with experts on the digital transformations that were underway. And we were able to converge precisely in opposition to the anxiety-inducing narratives from Anglo-Saxon firms that I won't name, but which basically explained that in 2020, we are in 2015, 33%, the 0.33% is me, of jobs would have disappeared. So there you go. The first thing we're doing is creating around this issue. To what extent AI, a certain climate of trust, and the way we approach it in our country is still different. And it's a way for me to pay tribute to all those who carry these AI debates from what we've experienced. And as a result, with my long-standing experience in the labor market and social issues in France, I have some concerns because it's true that the AI we are experiencing today is the one Stanislas just described, meaning what we call in topics the cuddly AI, meaning it's an AI designed around work situations to lighten and facilitate. I also know, as you all do, that significant investments are being made so that a new form of AI usage can be implemented end-to-end on complete processes, and IAG provides this missing layer today, which means that until now humans were always involved. We talked about mortgage credit earlier, and it's true that there are banks that handle the entire mortgage credit chain up to the client, who submits their data and loan request until the funds are deposited into the account, with just one appointment, with the branch manager. And I was going to say, without human intervention on 80% of the cases. And so when I see this type of transformation happening, I'm not sure we can say that what we're experiencing in terms of AI's impact on employment in France today is what will happen in the next 4 to 5 years. So, understand me, in years, or even saying I'm not worried about the demographic structures of what I was saying about productivity. But on the other hand, the deployment of this new phase of AI from a sectoral point of view, in certain jobs, from a macro perspective, I have more confidence in the figures that have been given. However, from a sectoral point of view, the capacity embedded in training in the fabric of our SMEs, which are very far from this movement, the ability to bring together this AI deployment in the coming years and succeed in terms of work and employment is not entirely assured. So that's the next question. I'm not going to write it down, but I want to share it with you. Even though the new phase of AI we are heading towards, the hard AI, we call it differently, etc., it has much more transformative impacts, and the productivity pressure from those who have invested in this AI, the productivity pressure we have in retail banking, for example, the pressure we will have to maintain our productivity in Europe will make the approach undoubtedly more demanding, more comprehensive. And therefore, it will call for much more significant transformations than what we have experienced so far.
Thank you, Bruno.
Charles, a word on this automation. To recap a bit of what was said before, the importance in automation is evaluation. That wasn't the word that was used, but it's really, we have a box, more or less black or sufficiently complicated for us to consider it a black box. And so, how do we handle work with a black box? It requires evaluation, meaning we will take 100, 10,000 cases that we know and try to see how this black box will react. And in a certain way, humans are also a black box. Because when a human takes on a task, we don't know exactly why. They perform the task in the way they do. So the thing that is extremely important in the end is to be able to evaluate across different cases, with different biases, with different constraints, and evaluate the result of the machine, potentially also against the results of the human. Because it might be a secret, but humans are not infallible. From time to time, humans make mistakes. And so it's also necessary to know how to evaluate these humans to determine when it is interesting to replace them with a machine. So To take a concrete example, I was telling you a little about our cases, the invoices. We didn't just automate everything and say, well, then we're going to see what the AI tells us and believe it blindly. We continue to have 2% of our invoices that we would evaluate manually to check what the AI had told us and compare it with what a human could say, because it's extremely important to maintain a sense of truth. Potentially the AI has gone off and created itself another reality. That's not what we want to do. We want to anchor this AI in reality. Similarly with medical AI, it's extremely important for us to have the supervision of a doctor, because today the person who holds the responsibility, at least under French regulation, is the human, the doctor, the person who supervises the entire process. And so I don't think we're going to have humans completely disappearing from these tracks. They will move a little higher in terms of abstraction. There will be a lot of things done under their supervision, but they won't need to dig as deep as they did in the past. And so naturally, we will move a little more towards what Vincent mentioned earlier, which is that we will have people who will become a bit more like managers of these AIs,